Everyone, I'm Erin Burnett, and out front tonight, Ahmadinejad on the spot. An unprecedented spectacle in Tehran today. The president summoned before Parliament for the first time since the 1979 revolution. Conservative parliament members called Ahmadinejad out on everything from the limping economy, which is a victim of U.S. sanctions, to his public disagreements with the Ayatollah, who, of course, is the supreme leader of Iran. Now, Ahmadinejad tried to make jokes, and he made no secret of his disdain for this event, saying, quote, "The fact is that I tried not to attend this session, but I guess it was ordained that I should come, so there was nothing I could do about it." I met him once in person. It sort of seemed the way he might have delivered that, a little nonchalant. All right, there's a growing power struggle between Ahmadinejad and the much more conservative Ayatollah Supreme Leader Ali Khamenei. President Obama watched today's Tehran action, and he used some of his strongest language yet while standing next to the Prime Minister of America's closest ally.
Tehran must understand that it cannot escape or evade the choice before it. Meet your international obligations or face the consequences.
Well, leaving no room for doubt, the president returned to the subject of Iran 30 minutes later.
The window for solving this issue diplomatically is shrinking.
All right, well, that window, of course, was cracked open last week when the U.S., along with the U.K. and other European allies, agreed to hold talks with Iran. And the question was, were those negotiations, coupled with sanctions, really going to work? Would it halt Iran's suspected progression towards a nuclear weapon? Well, here's something that is bizarre on that front. Today in Tehran, the issue of nuclear weapons did not even come up when Ahmadinejad faced Parliament's questions. Nuclear power program, not even on the table. Now, of course, it is important to say that Iran says its nuclear program is for peaceful purposes only. New polls, though, show Americans are losing patience, perhaps a lot of the rhetoric a part of that. 62% say they would support Israel taking military action against Iran, and this is crucial, if there was evidence Tehran was building nuclear weapons. 56% would support U.S. military action against Iran. Is a weekend Ahmadinejad good for the U.S. or not? Hoon Majid is Iranian-American writer, author of The Ayatollah Begs to Differ. Jamie Rubin is former Assistant Secretary of State for Public Affairs. Okay, great to have both of you with us. And Hoon, let me just ask you this key question about the power struggle that's going on in Iran. I mean, we've talked about this for a while, the Supreme Leader Ahmadinejad at odds, but how bad was this for Ahmadinejad today?
Well, it was embarrassing for him, and he tried to turn it into something that was not embarrassing. Obviously, with his cracking of the jokes, and even saying afterwards that, you know, I could have come up with better questions if they'd asked me first. They didn't even ask me very tough questions. But I mean, he's good. I mean, there's a lot of theater about the whole thing, but I think it was embarrassing for him. I mean, from a domestic political standpoint inside Iran, this has been threatened a bunch of times, but every time Parliament has backed off the threat of summoning him, which could lead to impeachment. The fact that it went through this time is embarrassing in his last year of office, or year and 3 or 4 months left in office. Certainly, I think it weakens him a little bit in the eyes of many people, but it also could strengthen him in the eyes of his supporters or people who believe that he is actually better than the hardliners who are running the country.
But Jamie, this is a key question, though, because if sanctions are effective, and I know obviously the impact that they have on regular people is a matter of real dispute. A lot of people feel that maybe that's not a good thing. But if they're effective in putting a stranglehold on the country, they may also be effective in pushing more people to support more hardline conservative elements in the country, which would be presumably the opposite of what the U.S. wants.
Well, yes. First of all, we need to remember, and as weird as this is to say, that when it comes to the nuclear weapons issue and the foreign policy of Iran, yes, Ahmadinejad is the moderate. He is more likely than some of the people around the leader, Supreme Leader Khamenei, to be interested in negotiating a solution with the United States. When it comes to your sanctions question, I don't believe that in the end sanctions will cause Iran to give up on a point of principle, that is their right to engage in nuclear enrichment. They have suffered great pain as a result of these sanctions. They have suffered great pain in the past as a result of sanctions and war with Iran and Iraq. Yes. That is not enough pain for them to give up something they regard as a demand from the United States. Let's remember, this regime was created with an anti-American element from its beginning. Yes. So to capitulate to the United States is not something I expect to happen. Unfortunately, without going into all the boring details, I think it's unlikely that the Iranians in this current formulation, where all the moderates have been eliminated from the Green Revolution, those were the moderates. Ahmadinejad is as the last moderate. He's weak now as a result of this humiliation, that Iran is going to find the wherewithal to negotiate effectively with the United States.
So, Salman, how does that play out then?
No, I agree. I mean, first of all, we have to remember that the nuclear issue in Iran is not something that is in dispute among Iranian politicians. All politicians in Iran agree on Iran's stand, which Jamie just quite rightly said, is that Iran has to enrich uranium.
Like I said, it's on the most common bill when you're there, the nuclear symbol.
Well, no, it's just something that is, and they know is supported by the people, generally supported by the people. At least Iran's right to enrich uranium is supported by the people. So that's not going to change. It doesn't really matter who the president is. It doesn't matter whether there's a fight going on between the Supreme Leader supporters and Ahmadinejad supporters. I agree with Jamie that certainly Ahmadinejad is much, much more moderate than many of the other hardline conservative leaders in Iran, and he's much more likely, and has always been more likely, to try to make a deal with the United States.
All right, so are we putting ourselves in a position, though, by increasing the onerous level of sanctions, which are about to get a whole lot worse come June, that we're going to get the opposite of what the U.S. and the West intends? I mean,
I think every time we put pressure on Iran, you empower the hardliners. Every time we put extra pressure on Iran, you empower the hardliners. I think that's just a fact of Iranian political life, is that every time Iran says, we want to make a deal with America, every Iranian leader, whether it's President Khatami before Ahmadinejad or Ahmadinejad, somehow America does something, puts extra pressure on Iran, puts it in the axis of evil, something like that, that makes a hardliner say, see, we told you from the beginning of the revolution.
He said President Obama, by saying this window, kind of, endorsed him, and I mean, I don't know whether he was trying to help him or hurt him by saying that. I mean, the guy's smart, and
he endorsed the idea of no war on Iran.
Let me jump in here. The president's rhetoric today, I think, is important, and that is
the window getting smaller.
And the phrase "or face the consequences." That choice rhetoric is the rhetoric that begins the run-up to the use of force generally in international relations. You have a phrase, serious consequences, in diplomatic parlance, means the use of force. I'm not saying the president said that today, but what I think is going on is that the Prime Minister of Israel came here, and what the president and the Prime Minister agreed to is, let's raise the specter of possible use of force higher. Let's agree on that, even if we disagree on whether we should actually do it, because they believe that will increase the chances of a diplomatic outcome. And there may be something to that. It may be possible to negotiate a solution. The problem is the solution will require the kind of concessions on both parts of the United States and the Iranians that I don't see anybody making.
I don't think that the statement is helpful. I believe that this kind of pressure, Iranians will.
President Obama's statement.
Oh yes, President Obama's statement about basically saying this is your last chance. You know, you either do this or the next, as Jamie says, serious consequences. In other words, threatening war again. It doesn't matter whether he means it, whether we're actually going to war or not. The way the Iranians perceive it is, you're threatening us, we're not going to buckle even 1 inch. If we were going to give an inch last week, when you were a little bit more about
now we're giving a millimeter.
Now we're not even going to give a millimeter. I think that's something that has been consistent in the Iranian leadership's view of America, is that, look, you can't trust them, they're constantly threatening us, you can't hold a gun to our head and say, okay, this diplomacy has to work in the next 2 months or 3 months or 4 months, or else. Take the or else off the table, and let's see how diplomacy works. That's their view.
Right. And U.S. view is, of course, we've tried that for 17 years. And
that's where the problem lies, that the requirements for not just the U.S., the West, for Iran to satisfy the International Atomic Energy Agency, they're not even close to meeting. Sometimes they get closer, but then they deny a particular site or they have a particular argument. And that's what I'm worried about, is that those minimum requirements don't seem any closer to the surface today than they were years ago.
And if the window is short, if the window is very short, then it really almost sounds like there isn't going to be a deal, because you can't negotiate.
Today,
you cannot negotiate a deal on Iran, which we've been working on for the last 10 years. You cannot negotiate it in a period of 2 or 3 months.
All right. Well, gentlemen, thank you very much. I will have you both back again.